The novel, The Slap is about it begins at a barbecue where a 3-year-old child is slapped by someone who's not a relation, and kind of the consequences of that. I think it's about a lot more, but that's the beginning. The mother of the child I feel quite protective of, because everyone seems to have an opinion about the choices she makes. And yeah, she makes some stupid choices, but I'm going to read from her section. And she's calling her own mother on her mother's birthday. Happy birthday. Rosalind, it's late. She would not apologise. It took ages to get Hugo to bed. It's much too late for him. I will not answer her. I will not answer her. Did you have a nice birthday? Don't be ridiculous, Rosalind. I'm over 70 years of age. Birthdays ceased to matter to me a long time ago. It baffled Rosie how her mother could have lived all her life in the back blocks of Perth and still managed to sound so English, so proper. Though it was an accent that Rosie had come to understand while living in London, would be unrecognisable to anyone actually from the British Isles. It was an accent learned from the ABC and the BBC World Service generations ago. Did Joan call around? Joan was her mother's best friend. Joan was her mother's only friend, she thought spitefully. She did. Ask about your grandchild. Will you ask about your grandchild? Did Eddie call? No, Edward did not call. I'm sure he will. The sniff from the other end of the line was almost coarse. Your brother will be propped against a bar getting drunk. I doubt he realises what day of the week it is, let alone it is his mother's birthday. Such spite, such sourness in her tone. Rosie felt her prickliness evaporate, felt only pity for her mother. She was relieved. Soon the conversation would be over and there would be nothing to regret. Joan is the only one who thinks of me. She should answer, I called. She should say, you make it so difficult. She could say, we don't call because we don't like you. What Rosie did instead was not answer at all. Soon it would be over. Your brother is a drunk. The men in our family are all drunks and the women in our family all marry them. Rosie felt herself blush. And as she felt the flush of warmth travel across her brow, her cheeks and neck, any sympathy she felt for the lonely old woman disintegrated. You malignant old bitch. It was not true. Gary was not an alcoholic. To drink at all was a sin in her mother's fucked up middle-class Christian worldview. Why couldn't she be honest? The real reason she couldn't stand him was because he was a tradesman. Okay, I just rang to say happy birthday. Thank you. I'll let you get to bed. You really should be putting Hugo to bed earlier. She could not think fast enough, could not find a way to disentangle herself from her mother's trap. So she did the wisest thing. He's usually in bed much earlier, she lied. Maybe he's a little sick. Are you working? Mothers always find the need to create problems for themselves when they're not working. Yeah, Mother, I'm fucking working. I'm raising my child. I'll find work next year when Hugo starts kinder. Please don't tell me you're still breastfeeding. That could only be answered by another lie. No. Thank God for that. I don't understand this obsession young women have to return to the days of being cows. I couldn't bear breastfeeding. When did you stop? 4 months ago. She made it up. Totally ridiculous. My God, he's 4, isn't he? Just turned 4. She couldn't resist it. You didn't call on his birthday. Rosie quickly glanced up at the doorway. Gary was stumbling towards the loo. I sent a card! Is that why you called me? To hurt me? And Mother's tone was furious. It was game, set and match. There was nothing else to do but that which her mother expected. I'm sorry. Good night, Rosalind. Thank you for calling. With that, the phone went dead. For a moment, Rosie couldn't move. She sat with the phone against her ear, listening to the phantom hiss of electricity. She slammed the phone on the table, feeling 16 again, wanting to fuck a boy, fuck a man, fuck anyone, drink, shoot up drugs, get paralytic, steal from a shop, curse and scream, anything to upset her, anything to make her mother hate Rosie as much as she hated her. She reached out for her husband's tobacco pouch. Smoking would have to do. You don't need that. She felt caught, guilty, but her hand did not move away. I just got off the phone with Mum. Yes, I do. They stared at one another. She couldn't read her husband's face. Don't yell at me. Don't be a smart ass. Don't get pissy. Gary walked over, leaned down and kissed the top of her head, squeezed her shoulder as he did so. The tenderness made her teary. He wiped at her eyes, took the pouch from her hand and rolled her a cigarette. "I'm going to bed," he murmured. "Hugo's asleep. You coming?" "In a moment." He kissed her on the lips. She breathed a sigh of relief as she heard him make his way to the bedroom. The smile on her face dropped away and she stared down at the phone. "You're wrong. I am a good mother. I am." Nothing any of her friends had said to her had prepared her for the shocking assault of the birth. She had so long fantasised about having a child, had pushed, needled, baited, nagged, threatened Gary into assenting to her desire, that she had not once thought she would hate it. She had loved being pregnant, was fascinated by the changes in her body, the independence of it to herself. She had loved the fact that she smelled and looked different. Her body had altered, turned from being angular and boyish into supple and feminine. But the birth had collapsed her back into herself. If pregnancy had been an escape from herself into her body, the labour had been a rebirth in which she had confronted her duplicity, her falseness, her ugliness, her self-hatred. She had been convinced of the sanctity of a home birth and natural delivery. Then it had begun and she had immediately realised her mistake, and by then it was too late to ask for drugs. The actual memory of it was thankfully fragmented, opaque flashes from a nightmare. But what she did remember vividly, could never forget, as they tried to prise the child out of her, was that all she knew, all she wanted, was that it be taken away from her. She had made a terrible, unspeakable mistake. For the first 6 months, every time she held Hugo, she shook with terror. She was convinced that she would kill him. Every time he cried, she felt herself shrinking further from him. He was an alien being. He was going to destroy her. For 6 months after the birth, she had continued to go to yoga, had kept wanting to meet regularly with Anouk and Aisha, had wanted to sleep, drink, take drugs, have sex, had wanted to be young. She did not want to be a mother. She'd felt as if she were about to break in two, that she was no longer Rosie, but this strange evil beast that could not feel love for the child that it had brought into the world. She hated reminding herself of it. God, how she had hated that child. She couldn't even call him by his name. She distrusted him, was scared of him. She must have been mad, must have gone mad. The uncontrollable sobbing, the fantasies of drowning him in his bath, of snapping his neck. For 6 months she'd been insane, and during that time she had not said a word about it to anyone. Not to her husband, to Aisha, to the mother's group, to her family, not anyone. She had not dared. She smiled and pretended to love her baby. Then one morning she had been frantically trying to organise herself to go to yoga. The child was screaming, crying incessantly. Feeding, lullabies, yelling at it, nothing could stop the terrible sound of him. She felt a moment's strange calm. She would let him cry, leave him in the house, the shitty little one-room box they were renting in Richmond. Leave him there, let the little prick cry himself out. She wanted nothing of it. She was at the front door, keys in her hand, her sports bag over her shoulder. She was going to get into the car and drive. Let him howl. Let the little bastard howl himself to death. Let him choke. She had opened the door and looked out to the street. It was summer. There was sunlight and no breeze, and there was no one around. She had stood in the doorway for a good 10 minutes, her bag still over her shoulder, her fist clenched around the keys, looking out to the world. You are not free, she told herself. If you want to survive this, if you don't want to kill yourself or kill your child, you must realise you are not free. From now on, until he can walk away from you, your life means nothing. His life is all that matters. It was then she had stepped back and shut the door. She shut out the street, the world. She had picked up the screaming baby and hugged it close. Hugo, Hugo, it's all right, she whispered. It's going to be fine. I'm here. Thank you.